Lead us off with the King's Gambit after round 7.
Well, I think for the first time, we got brackets.
Brackets.
Yeah.
I love brackets.
Brackets. I think that the competition has settled into 4 brackets. Those that can absolutely win it, got the personnel, got the system, things look in order. Okay, so that I think everyone would sign off on that being Collingwood, Melbourne, Brisbane and Geelong. The second bracket is that maybe just waiting on one player or one component. There's a shortfall, there's a wart or two.
Yes.
Okay? There's plenty of time to correct and a lot can change. But in the next bracket, not quite there to win it just yet, St Kilda, Carlton, Adelaide, Western Bulldogs and Port Adelaide for me. So that there's a fair bit in there. Just waiting on something to slightly shift or change or have an absolute weapon that can take them all the way.
St Kilda, Carlton, Port Adelaide, Bulldogs and?
Adelaide.
Adelaide.
And then next bracket back that are going okay, but we don't realistically think they're one player away or one component away. Essendon, Sydney, Richmond, GWS, Fremantle and Gold Coast. And then there's just the bracket 4, which we all think are just gathering themselves for about 3 years' time, Gerard.
That's kind, David.
That's kind.
That's how Dennis Committee used to use the word interesting.
Yeah. The Crabs, Gerard. The Hawks, the Kangas, and the West Coast. They're just in a different space at the moment. We all know why, and you can argue whether they should be there and how they're there and why they're there. But the reality is they're there. So the 4 brackets for me, and you can argue brackets 2 and 3, and you can move some up and some down. But I do think that the second bracket, something would have to shift with those teams for them to become an absolute contender.
Okay, nice.
Do you agree or disagree with any of those?
No, I like the brackets. No, I think so. There are a couple of really good talking points in there, which is going to flesh out during the means test. So you've got Geelong in the top bracket. You've got Sydney in the third bracket.
It hurt me to put Geelong in the top bracket.
Yes, I know it would have, but
they're in there.
You can't ignore it forever. And Sydney, who are the architects of their own demise at the moment, they fall to the third bracket.
They're in the third bracket because they have problems with some of their system, and they don't have the man. They don't have the follow me.
The big issue, no lead is safe from Collingwood. No lead. No scenario. It can't be Collingwood proofed.
It can't be Collingwood
You have to, when you get them, you have to bury them so deep. And Adelaide didn't bury them deep. And they have the lament in the aftermath.
So where do you start? So this is the bit that I love about Collingwood. Now, they're banged up. They've got a lot of players on the sideline. So they don't look for an excuse. They look for an angle or a reason they can still win. 2 minutes to go. Collingwood stay true to who they are. That they charge from stoppage. They outnumber everywhere. They take the risk on losing the game to win it. Now, that sounds really easy in isolation. But at the end of 120 minutes of footy, to still have the will and the want to say, you know what, we're still got to run here, boys. And some of the individual acts were brilliant. Johnson to knock that ball through to actually make it at least a 2-point draw. Then to say, okay, the ball's in our forward half. Let's challenge them to take it full length of the ground. They almost did it, the Crows. So credit to them. They almost did it. And then Will Hoskin-Elliott gets a fist in when he probably shouldn't. And everyone gives away a free kick in that instance, but somehow he doesn't.
Yep.
And then you see that stoppage, that all-powerful stoppage where they just charge. Crisp is involved in everything that is creative at Collingwood. We don't talk enough about Jack Crisp. His desire to just turn up and make it a 4v3 on the wing is why they get through. So, Steele Sidebottom's just working that wing as he has done all year. And he had an indifferent game yesterday, did some good things, did some bad things. But when the game was there to be won, without Pendlebury, who's been the architect of everything, really, he still knew what needed to happen. But if you just look in the wake of where the ball's going, there are always Collingwood players turning up, well ahead of the Adelaide Crow players. And that to me is a reflection of the coach, the mindset. Hey, go. Be proactive, be positive, because if it doesn't work, that's all right. We're not going to win every game. but we're gonna die playing our brand, and if we win, it'll be huge, and it was huge, in the state, backs against the wall, down on talent, down all day, like they are the special wins. And the coach showed emotion like he hasn't for a while, and I love it.
Yep.
I love it. He's a bit of a smiling assassin, Craig McRae. He sits there and he talks a beautiful game, and he's jovial. He looks inoffensive, but he's a killer, Gerard. He's a killer. He's doing some things at Collingwood with this group that I think is going to take them a long, long, long way. And we've been talking about him for a while, and this could have happened last year, really. That first final was great, but
Yes,
I don't know what the lead is. I don't know how to answer your question.
Well, no lead is safe from Collingwood unless you get it out to 40 plus when you've got momentum. This game put me so much in mind of the preliminary final and the last quarter as they just inevitably closed and closed and closed, and they didn't get there at the SCG. And by the end of it, you're wondering, how didn't they get there? And then just in those last couple of minutes, you're watching it going, are they going to get there? They're going to get there. Johnson's presence of mind to make sure tie it up before you need to hit the lead, which sets up the steel side bottom shot where any score will do.
Yeah. But I think you've got to factor in the opposition as well. There's like a fog comes over the opposition.
That happened. Essendon invited it last week.
Yeah.
And as soon as it materialised in front of them, they knew.
They go into quicksand.
Oh, you know what this is? We're getting gunned down here.
It's happening.
And then, yes.
So I think it's twofold. The opposition, they just seize up. They can't think. I mean, there's an act or two of individual brilliance with these teams every time, but for some reason they stop playing their brand. They go reactive instead of proactive. They're worried about so it's all consuming now.
Yes.
This used to happen way back when Terry Wallace was coaching the Western Bulldogs. I'm talking like 97, 98 sort of period. They went with this propaganda exercise that they are the fittest team in the country. They will outrun everyone, and it just grew.
Yep.
The snowball effect of that just grew. This is like that. It doesn't. If you're a goal or two goals in front of Collingwood, you think, oh, is that enough? Normally, you're super comfortable with that. We've got 10 minutes to play. We're a couple of goals up. Everything's all right. No, they're actually seizing up. So it's great to watch. It was an awesome game, and we needed a couple of good ones on the Sunday, and we got them.
They're waiting for the jump scare, the opposition, and the jump scare comes. So let's do the what they got wrong in here, because I can imagine what snap judgments would have been like today had Collingwood not won. Because as well as the fog descending on Adelaide, the fog descended upon the umpires in a manner that is so rare. And I'm so reticent on a Monday morning when people want to zero in, all they can see is the umpiring. But there was some woeful decision-making with the game on the line. The Murphy scenario was absurd, that the free kick wasn't paid, and then he's going off under the blood rule, and they pay an insufficient intent against Degoe. And then I just couldn't believe that Ash Johnson won on the goal line. He's dragged down over the shoulder, which is just 100 times out of 100.
Oh, that was bizarre.
Umpire looked at it, saw it, and decided not to blow the whistle. It's totally unacceptable. I'm not an umpire basher, but when the game, but as we can be critical of Adelaide and what they did, they froze up those umpires. It was terrible, like alarmingly terrible.
Yeah, and we don't normally go into this space.
Never, almost never. And I tried it. I don't like these snap judgments, but I'm sitting there going, I think Kane's an evil genius. He must get it from his father. So Graham introduced the idea, and then it manifested in front of us in the last quarter that the South Australian teams were getting done over by a Victorian conspiracy from the umpires.
Oh, that's one of those yearly articles.
I know. You can see conspiracy everywhere. And then the umpires were just, they were paralysed by it.
Well, they're allowed to have a bad day too. I don't like talking about umpiring, really.
Right, let's just document it as they got that wrong.
You can have that one.
Yeah,
you've got more.
Have
credits.
To be better than that in those on the really obvious stuff. These weren't the marginal ones.
No, but they would have been our best umpires for that game, Gerard.
No, they wouldn't have been. It's not how
Adelaide,
it's not how it's been distributed at the moment. It's not how the
we haven't done that
operating.
yet. No, I don't want to go after the umpires. There's no win there. Let the Collingwood fans do that.
All right.
They can give you a call later.
They also got that rush behind wrong at Dockland. Will Power knocked that ball through from downtown with nobody around him.
That was
If
bizarre.
you were going to pick a clip and go, this is
Yeah.
what we're looking for, this is it. If you see this is deliberate. No, we didn't blow the whistle. You go, what? Like,
I don't think you should be able to handball the ball through either, even if it is to a teammate who's a metre over the line and doing it on purpose. But anyway, there's a whole lot of things that got through on the weekend. Alex Pearce, I reckon, charged into an opponent twice and took him high, and for some reason they didn't pay that. But there's always a few, but no upside in going after the umps. No. We'll park that one. Leave that one.
had Collingwood lost, the world would be burning this
yeah.
morning. That's the best of the best. Toby Greene winning the Battle of the Bridge for the Giants. The means test is early today, the first hour. Andrew Dillon has been appointed the next chief executive of the AFL. That press conference at 10:15, we will have it for you. The best bits, salute Toby Greene.
Star, isn't he? Dermot Burton called it perfectly when he kicked that ball deep and it went out of bounds. He said, he gets to reset, he gets to come to the stoppage, and the Swans had an awful quarter of defensive 50 stoppages, and we'll get to that later on when we talk about Sydney. But if you just talk about Toby and his effect on games is incredible. So there's two players in the team. So he's the second most important player to his team in terms of scoring in the competition. So he's involved in 36.5% of the GWS scoring.
Right. Who's won?
I want you to have a guess. They won heavily on the weekend, and he kicked a bag, Gerard.
Oh, Charlie Curnow.
Big Charlie.
Right.
He's involved in 37.6%. So they're both close to 40%.
Yep.
That's an unbelievable number. Most players are somewhere between the midfielders and the high possession getters and the spark forwards are somewhere between 25 and 30%. So they're a fair way above those parameters. So I love what he does. His leadership. And everyone 2 years ago was talking about, can you make this guy captain? Can you make this guy? This is why he's captain. Because when the moments arrive, he delivers. 22 disposals he has, 11 of them go on the scoreboard. I mean, there's not many players can do that. Look, he's a pseudo centre-half forward, crummer,
Yes.
clearance player. He's been a midfielder that's found a way. He's had to go forward, for large patches of his career, and he's done an unbelievable job. So, you just are in awe of what he's able to do.
Yep.
They got this decision 100% correct for him to be captain, didn't they?
He was the best bit.
Yeah.
Toby Greene. The debate is Richmond. They find themselves in 16th position. They have the one win from 7 rounds. They lived that wicked cycle. They played well in the games that they were unlikely to win, and then they played terribly in the game that was winnable for them. So what is Richmond's reality? The debate for Syfe. Kick financial goals with Syfe. Download the app.
In simple terms, I think they addressed their shortcomings with clearance and contested possession by acquiring Taranto and Hopper in the off-season, and thought, okay, when it gets to the pointy end, we've got the rest sort of in order, our ability to move the ball, damage, punish and score, and we're pretty good defensively. There's times when they're at their very, very best, they're bulletproof down back over the last few years. Maybe that's come off a fraction in the last 18 months, but they're reasonable. So they thought they'd fix their holes, their warts, and in effect have lost the rest. They're actually a reasonable clearance and contested possession team now, probably around the AFL, which is better than where they've been. But they can't score. Their forward 50 is the worst in the competition. Can you believe that? It's the worst. So when you thought Taranto and Hopper are coming in, that would send Bolton, Martin, Lynch, Rewalt, all these spark players, these goal kickers. I know a few of them have been injured and they're not all there at the minute. You just think this is going to be deluxe. This is going to show a different version of Damien Hardwick, the coach, and for whatever reason, it's gone against them. It hasn't worked, and I don't think it's an easy solution now, because that forward line not working, you have to pull apart that forward line a little bit, and it's bad news for the older guys, because in the end, you have to spin back to youth for a spark. So they've lost their ability to punish with the footy, and that has been Richmond forever and a day. Those handball chains, on that wing line, into damaging forwards with a bit of space at speed. We haven't seen that, and that's. I think it's a shame because that brand of footy is so exciting to watch. So we wonder whether Damien can get that back, or do you have to now change and go with the competition? Do you now have to look at what the Crows are doing and what Collingwood are doing, and play a little bit differently? Don't know. So they're the sorts of things that will be going through Damien's mind at the moment. How much change is required? And we don't have the answers.
Yep. Is this just they've gone over the cliff?
Gone over the cliff? Potentially. Yeah, potentially. I mean, you would say it'd be incredibly difficult to make finals now. And really, could they do any damage when they get there? So at some point, you got to call it. I think John Longmire called it with Sydney a few years ago early and said, no, we can't get there this year. Let's reset. Let's learn what we've got. Find out which players are or aren't taking us to the promised land, whether they be old or whether they be young, and set up for that next opportunity. I still don't see the acquisition of Taranto and Hopper as a problem because they're going to be mainstay midfielders for a 5-6 year window, whilst these young kids who aren't there, if they were already there, they wouldn't have got these guys. And they've had a glut of high picks anyway. Well, they got 5 picks inside of 30 the previous year. There's enough there. There's enough there to sort of build around. So, I'm not sure where they go and how quickly they go there. Because it sounds like they're going to fight it for a little while. They're going to fight the truth instead of saying, okay, let's just call it. You can't publicly call it.
No, you can only we can watch what happens to figure out whether they've called it or not.
Selections will tell us where they're going. Who's coming in, who's going out, who's getting managed more regularly than you thought.
Yep.
Those little telltales.
And Marvel has become an impediment for them. I think by their own hand. I was watching them kick that game away in the first half thinking, I've seen this game before. That was the North Melbourne game of last year. Yeah. Where they kicked themselves out of it when they had momentum in the game.
Yeah.
I was trying to think chicken or egg. Did Damien Hardwick turn on Marvel because they were awful there, or did he turn on Marvel and now they're awful there?
Yeah, well, if you keep telling people we don't like coming here to play, you'll be correct. If you keep telling people they can't kick, we had this discussion last week about Taranto. It was written up poorly, to be honest. But what we're saying is if you keep telling someone the same message, you will be right. So just be careful what message you're spreading. We all know Damien doesn't want to go there, and the fans don't want to go there, but you've got to win games there. So it's a shame, Gerard, but unfortunately, I didn't want it to be over for Richmond because I love the way they have played, but it's just not functioning.
Let's do the pressure index, David King, and the Swans have earned themselves a place here. They've coughed up another game at home that they had won, and now they find themselves in a sticky situation, and you've put them in the third bracket.
Yeah, you can win games in any way, and you can lose games in any way. So there's just because you win clearance and you win contests and you win inside 50 doesn't mean you win the game. The battle between the arcs is just as important as the battle inside the arcs. And right now they are ranked 18th at defending the opposition forward 50 stoppages. 18th for a team that's been so well structured and so disciplined for years. They've conceded 85 points, and the AFL average is about 50. So that's 6 goals. That's a lot. If you're talking about a goal a game, you try a lot of things to find that goal a game. You change everything you're about to find 1 to 2 goals a game week to week. Take one off the opposition, find an extra for yourself. That's the whole week of coaching. So if you're giving up that sort of volume at stoppage, you're in trouble. And the fact of the matter is they're ranked 14th for what we call winning contest in general play. They're ranked 14th. You can't be down there. You can't be because it means you just don't get the opportunity to continue your possession chains to score, or you can't stop the opposition going the other way. Now, the numbers, you can distort the numbers a little bit, but at the end of the day, they're getting hammered from clearance and they're getting hammered at contest. That's a bad mix. When you're talking about winning the thing, they'll be a reasonable team. They'll win a lot of home and away games. because they've got some good talent. But who is their beast? Who is the man? And Parker's form against GWS is unbelievable. He's been dominant the last 4 or 5 times. But outside of this game for Luke Parker, he's sort of been a bit up and down. And then who is the next one? So everyone wants to talk about Lance Franklin and how many targets they go to and those sorts of things, but that's not the problem. The problem is winning contest. Are they tough enough? It was a question in the back half of last year. It reared its head on the biggest game in the grand final. They just got assaulted for 30 minutes. It's still there. It's still there. And I know John Longmire would say we should have won that game, 4 goals up. Yep, you probably should have. But doesn't wallpaper over the cracks of what the reality actually is right now with the Sydney Swans.
So the open question, I just want to explore this. There's lots of opinions in these moments.
Yep.
The open question is, why is West Coast so bad? So I thought I'd frame it up first before we put you to work on it. So round 13, 2021, West Coast beat Richmond in a thrilling encounter, and they're in the 8 midway through 2021. And 19 of the 23 players who played that night are still on the list. And since then, they've gone 5 wins and 33 losses. And they've gone 3 and 18 at home. And they've had their 300-plus point defeats at home. Their injury list totals 1,347 games. You just can't walk past that. So there's 11 players on it. Of those who have played senior footy, there was an average of 90 games a player. And of those who played, it was an average of 86 games. So there's more experience on the injured list than there was on the active field of play by average. They had 11 players 0 to 50 games, 4 51 to 100 games, 5, and then they had 8 in the plus 100 category. So 8 of their 23 on Saturday night have played 100 games or more. Of their recent picks, so they've only had 5 picks of any worth, as Kane has well documented over recent years. 3 of those are injured. Jinby went 9. So they've got 9, 2 14s, a 23 and a 29. So this is not even the rebuild list yet. So my question that I just want to explore is, why are they so bad?
Well, people think I stick up for Simo. I probably invest in going a bit deeper than just how many picks have they had, and then blanket excuses for them. I'm not here to make excuses for them. They're their own footy club, right? So I'm not doing that. But I understand the situation. They can't even train at the moment, Gerard. There are 26 available players. 26. They got 17 on the injury list. I don't know of a club that could compete with that sort of trauma. So most of those guys are the ones that are the pointers. Hey, you stand here, you stand there, you do this. Hey, we need a lift from you. Hey, you go in for the next centre bounce. Hey, let me come in for the next centre bounce. Hey, kick the ball forward. Do this, do that. It's those guys. So when you're missing some of your leaders and your more important pieces in the puzzle, it is hard to compete. At the same time as doing all this, they've undergone significant change in the way they play. So they've gone from being the worst ground ball team in the competition to somewhere near the top 4 or 5. Now that's a significant shift. That's a coaching change. That was what they addressed in the off-season. Everyone said Simo needs to change, and they need to do X, Y, and Z with their talent. So that's fine. So there is change there. The problem is there's a lack of talent and a lack of consistency because you've got a lot of young players or fresh players into the team. Now, that's the simple answer for this year. Okay, so if you want to track back and have a historical sort of discussion, well, I think they were in it to win it 2017 to 2021. Right, you get your 4 or 5 year window.
This is worth recounting, I think, because this has all been brushed over under the hub years. So 2018, they win it. 2019, they lose the last game of the home and away season and blow their top 4 place. They win their elimination final, but they've set themselves on a course where they never got over that loss in the last home and away season. In the hub year, where the club was profoundly unhappy, they finished 5th. They hosted an elimination final, which they coughed up at Collingwood. But they did finish 5th. So this idea is, Well, they've been monumentally hopeless since they went into the hub. That's not really true. They were profoundly
No,
unhappy,
but they were 4 wins better than
but they
fifth.
weren't monumentally hopeless.
No, they were hopeless because they should have finished top 2. They were set for a 5-year opportunity to win 2 or 3 flags. They won 1. Now, there's no slight on them winning 1. They are bloody hard to win. So you go all in. When you're in that window, you cost yourself a draft or 2 because you have to win it when you're there. That's what good clubs do. They take the risk on winning it and they cop the fallout. And the fallout is from the cheap seats. It doesn't matter. If you go for it and get it, all credit to you. That's what they've done. Now they're at the end of the road for this. Now I think if you say 2021 was the end of their opportunity, then they're 30 games past that. So to me, I understand where they're at. If you're looking for change in personnel, well, that'll start because the guys that either don't play regularly through lack of durability or preparation or absolute professionalism, any of those reasons, or if they're not good enough, they'll be out. They'll be gone. So everything's being exposed, which is not a bad thing. If you're the hierarchy of the West Coast, you say, you know what, hey, we've seen Andrew Gaff when the other leaders aren't there. Is this really the guy that we need to hang on to? We've seen this guy who's not as professional as Tim Kelly's been the reverse. Tim Kelly's working his tail off, right? So they would say, you know what, that's all right. He's doing what we want him to do. And then they'd go through every player, every young player. I mean, there's a complete mismatch on Charlie Gurner on the weekend. I mean, if ever you're going to have a mismatch, don't have it against Charlie Gurner.
Yes.
So he gets it on the scoreboard. And there's not much you can do about that as a coach, really. So I understand the criticism, and I think it's warranted if the system hadn't changed. If you're prepared to dig deep enough, they are playing miles different to how they've played the last few years, this year. But it's easy to say they've lost by 100 points. It's really, it's fingernail deep to steal Ross Lyonism. So I don't know whether Simo survives, wants to survive, wants to be there next year, wants to be there for 10 years. I have no idea. But to say nothing's changed is wrong. That's just wrong.
The next step in their list build, though, is now to create the rebuild list. So that's not there. This is not the rebuild list, losing games by 100 points. This is the tail end of what has been, which is absolutely crippled by injury. I'll use the clip, just gone off the cliff.
Yeah.
So then next steps are the rebuild list, and that's where your real trauma comes.
See, this is where I like the chat, right? If you can just start the chat here, forget the rest. So you get to a point, however you get there, right? What now? So there are some that say, trade out some of your stars, get some high draft picks in. Others say, hang on to some senior core players, get some young players in, and have the experience around the edges to show them the way. And then there are others that say, why bottom out? Just hang on to all of them and just go to the draft and keep topping up because that's the way. Why bottom out? Why go all the way down to come all the way back and cost yourself 8 years? Now, I think from the outside looking in the media, we all just handpick what narrative suits us at the time when you want to have a go at a club. So what is the right way in your own philosophy? Put it on the table and see if they follow it or not. Because all clubs have done it in different ways. And we don't know how they're going to do it, but I don't know if it'll be Simo that corrects it. Usually this coach doesn't survive. Usually
it's
company.
the next coach that doesn't survive.
Yeah.
So that's the curiosity of where they find themselves, I think, this is not the rebuild list. The rebuild list with potentially the new coach comes next year, and then you start that grim process.
But do you think Simo will be the rebuild guy?
I don't.
No.
I think it would be a waste of his talents, if I'm honest. I think he's a so much better coach than the scenario he finds himself in. So I think that's for a young development coach. If that would be my cold answer. Don't waste your talents anymore.
Yeah.
This is such a long process from here.
Yeah. So look, the decisions are all we're going to judge. I don't think it's fair to judge the team at the moment with 17 injuries, but when they return, will they be the finished product or the full health? Just because their magnet goes back in, I don't expect them to perform. So we look at Hawthorn and we say, okay, they're full of young kids and Sam's cut the list all the way back. Is that the right way? I don't know. We look at Geelong, who've just topped up and topped up and topped up and topped up and keep going and charging at it, and they've found the way. So all we're worried about are what are the decisions from here forward and who do they involve. And the club are really happy with Adam Simpson. That's what's being lost. He's got another year of contract after this year. So we wait and see. I could see all options on the table. I could see him just shaking hands and saying, hey, look, we've been good for each other. Good luck going forward, but let's do it with someone else. I could see him doing that. He's that sort of guy. And he'd do it in his own way with a smile on his face and it'd be amicable. But I could also say, you know what, just give me an opportunity with these blokes on the park. I can see both options.
PFI, preliminary final integrity. This is where we run the rule over Geelong.
Well, let's talk about what they are. Okay, so what they are is, and what they've shown us to be the last few weeks is incredibly damaging from clearance. So I'm a big believer in the strike rate. So it's all well and good to win the footy, whether you win it on turnover or you win it at stoppage. What can you then do with that possession? So going into the game on the weekend, they'd won 215 clearances and lost 215, but they were about 120 points in front of their opposition. So you think, oh, that's an asset. Okay, so they've got the ability to punish and not be hurt by losing clearances. So when the game stops, Geelong get themselves organised and then they push the big beasts in at clearance and they go to work. Now, Patrick Dangerfield is in unbelievable form. He really is. So to put that into context, so you normally get about 90 points per 101 clearances, okay? So if you win, it's just less than par. They're getting about 125. So it's a massive advantage, and what they're conceding is about 70. So they're well above AFL expectation on both facets. So it is all Dangerfield, if you ask me. So to go a bit deeper on Patrick Dangerfield. So this sort of snuck up on me a little bit, and it's not until you, as you say, dig a little bit deeper that you see it. So he would probably be the most bench player in the competition right now. He's been to the bench, I think it's close to 50 times.
Right.
He's only playing 70% of game time. So he yesterday, he nearly broke his own record. He had 15 inside 50s, 10 clearances in 70% of game time. So right now, when you compare him to other midfielders, so to put it into context, so Bontempelli, Oliver, Petrarca, who else is in there? They all play about 84, 85% game time. So it's another 15%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but across the course of the year, you'll bank 2 or 3 games worth of time for Paddy. So I don't know whether they're doing that to keep him powerful, to keep him burst, and have him do what he's doing in game at the moment, or is it because of the marathon that this version of Paddy needs to still be this version of Paddy at the end of the year? But credit where credit's due, he's done unbelievable things for that midfield. I'm still going to got me little asterisks on it, Gerard, because at 33, can you still be this guy? Maybe you can. And the big 3 again yesterday, it's almost the big 4 really, because you nearly got to throw Tom Stewart in there now. And Gerard Healy spoke about him yesterday consistently with his decision making and his ball use just being pure, just making the right kick at the right time, and just it meant that Essendon couldn't disrupt their ball movement. So it was just so good to watch the big boy at full forward go crazy. I did go early on Geelong. I didn't expect the big 4 to do what they're doing right now. Do I have them in front of the others? No, but you've got to recognise what you're seeing.
Yeah, so they're back in. Well, they're in your top bracket.
They're in the top 4.
So what I loved about the weekend, so Tom Hawkins kicked his game high in game 334. And Travis Boak was best on ground in game 333. I think those are the right numbers.
They're crazy,
which is just it was beautiful. So just give me one more. Just give me North Melbourne. So they were the worst bit, the way they fronted up into that game at the start. The Comben injuries is bad. We've had Jeremy Howe and Charlie Comben. Just give me a précis on North Melbourne.
This is why you have Alistair Clarkson. This is why you go get him. So he sits there at the front of the media throng and he says, this is what we're doing. This is where it's going wrong. It's not far off. Boom, boom, boom. And he can absorb all this. This trauma would have still been there regardless of who was sitting at the front. Now, I don't think it's all effort. I think when you get things slightly wrong structurally, you can look really poor, particularly down back. You're a victim of ball movement and all these sorts of things. And you play a good side, you can get whipped. Now, I want to see a greater contest than that. Absolutely, all North Melbourne fans do. But we have trust. I think that Alistair Clarkson has the answers, and we're 7 weeks in, so there was always going to be some pain. But Lee Montagna showed some vision last night of just the margins, the fine margins that are involved when you're defending space. Now, some can say you shouldn't be defending space, you should be going one-on-one. That's up to Alistair Clarkson, really. Yeah, is there a right time to go from one-on-one to the other? But you're right, we want to see a better performance than that. You should really never be beaten by 100 points, but it does happen.
Let's finish off with the seedings for Tyre Power, tipping winners on tyre safety all season. Who have you got at 4?
The Cats at 4 for me. Again, I still think they're a fair way off the others, but it's good to see the big 4 doing what they're doing.
Brisbane Lions are at 4 for me, been in the seedings for a few weeks now. Friday night's the game, isn't it, against Carlton? I want to see that at Marvel. That'll shake the seedings. They'll go up or they'll slip out one way or the other. 3?
Yeah, Brisbane for me. I just think their forward line putting pressure on now. That was brilliant what they did to dismantle Fremantle and their handball game on the weekend. And then they've got a great ability to get it on the scoreboard. Ashcroft his numbers, Gerard, sneaky good. They're a low disposal team, so his numbers have got to be elevated. 3,
Geelong for me, 19 goals, 20 goals, 20 goals, 20 goals. That's tuning up one part of your game. Now, the Adelaide challenge, which is significant. I love it. 2,
Melbourne.
Too
tough, too strong. A lot of young players playing high-level footy. They're dragging the club through. It's not just the 3 or 4 at the top of the tree with Melbourne. They always play well, but the rest are coming for the ride.
And 1, Collingwood.
Yeah. I think we agree there, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. And so good. And we can't wait for them to get some players back. I mean, we haven't seen Collingwood at their best yet. And they're sitting, 6-1. So it's exciting, and it's a great way to play football. It's a great way to coach.